something simple as the lights.
Yeah.
They put the new lights.
Yeah, so I've been there on the Sundays where they go from game lights to regular lights, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, big difference.
Hi.
And then they just put in, the school, like just things like that.
The locker rooms, and those are all new since I.
Yeah, but what's nice is going to happen is that the building department will be taking over maintenance of
I don't think Lindsay's coming tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think Lindsay's coming tonight. I think she's selling
I
cookies.
think that big move with the Zamboni
Kelly's
down
not
to
coming and
where it
Leo's
is
not
now.
coming. So
the kids
it's
don't have
very
to cross
lonely.
the guy back
And
out.
Stacy's not coming.
Yeah.
No.
That's better.
Yeah.
Look, do something out back, 'cause it's
I'll move down.
still slow.
Yeah.
I got whole side of the table is,
Dan does a good job. Yes, it's always been good.
Yeah, yeah.
They misspent me a little bit, but not, the only during the time.
But we're not sure about Lindsay?
Well,
no, I think I asked her if she wanted coffee and she said, I'm selling cookies in Porter Square. That was like 5 minutes ago. So, aha.
I filled it with liquid water.
I can leave her in that direction just in case. Ah, jeez.
When my kids were little,
Yeah.
it was like there were these little slippers, you had to get in and get out, and that was your window, and you had to leave.
Okay, what is, oh, coffee's on my glasses.
Hi.
Hi, Vinny, how are you?
Yeah, one set.
You're great? Good.
Great, yes.
Great is good.
It used to be Fridays and Sundays.
So, you went away for,
I did. We went to Whistler, out in Canada, where the Olympics were in 2010.
yes?
So,
Wow.
yeah, it was beautiful. Quite impressive.
Are you a big skier?
I am, yeah. I mean, the older I get, the slower I get. But my kids passed me a good 10 years ago, I swear. But
Rental skates are always.
it's good.
Plus, if you have public skating, you know.
I skied when I was younger. I haven't done it for like 20 years.
It's 20 years isn't that long ago.
Yeah, it's just been like, my life is like too complicated.
Yes. Well, we took a good 10 years off. When we had the kids, and we put them in the programs, like the rec department programs, to learn how to ski without us. So then, finally, when they became like we could control them, we started skiing again. But it was a smart approach.
Couldn't get out of work and come here in time.
Minutes ago, Fairmont.
And no, we're not gonna do it. So give it to her and make her fix it.
Oh yes, I heard about this.
It's like the motions are,
Okay. Yeah.
we're gonna take it.
Attendance listed. I mean, unless, I can just say.
No, we're gonna table it.
Yeah.
We pay them to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. You know me. I love baseball.
The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I'm going to table the minutes because there were some issues with them. We'll move right into reviewing the schedule and upcoming work plan. It's this Scott or Tim?
I'll take that. So this is a graphic that you've seen before. It's kind of the big picture look at where we're going with the project. So we're at the first phase, which is the preliminary design program. So this is the first step that we're going to talk about tonight. It is the beginning phase, so it's by no means a decision's being made at this phase, obviously. That's tonight. We're hoping to submit that in the next week or so. The next step is the preferred schematic report, so that is an important, obviously, very important phase around developing the work further enough that the committee can make its preferred schematic decision, which we've targeted that decision officially to be in September, but it's the beginning of September in order to make the necessary board dates. We're looking at something in early September, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide. And then this all leads to getting the schematic design completed and priced, and as part of an MSBA board, we're targeting the schematic design ready for the MSBA board in February of 2021. So this, again, you've seen this before, but this leads toward a spring 2021 approval. If you look at the detail, which you probably can see better on your handout, one of the things, and we'll talk about this at the end of the meeting, about the third community forum that's coming up to update people on the progress of the options we've been discussing and that AI3 have developed further. And then moving into this preferred schematic report, although we are submitting it in September, because of the summer, a lot of work is going to need to be done over the next couple of months so that we leave heading into the summer with, I think, a pretty strong idea where the committee wants to go in terms of the preferred schematic. So the plan is to have a fourth community forum. This is not a firm date, obviously. This is just a tentative date, but sometime before the school, season is over for the year, and develop work along and keep you folks apprised of that as we move through that process. So you can see these dates that are in lines 51 and 2 and 3 are tentative dates leading to the MSBA board in October of next year. So there's a lot of work ahead for the next couple of months, particularly, and that's sort of the work plan for accomplishing that.
Are there any questions on this portion?
Just to reiterate a couple of things that Tim mentioned, and certainly what we've explained to the building committee in the past. Tonight, our goal is to request from the building committee that they approve us to take all the information we've compiled over the last several months and submit that information to the MSBA. It does not involve selecting a specific site. It does not involve selecting a building design. It doesn't involve approving anything like that. It simply is the building committee's approval for us to take all the information you've seen, pass it along to the MSBA in the format that they would like to see it in, because this phase is more about gathering information. It's not about studying detailed options. I think we mentioned when we first started this phase that we were going to do a little bit more study in this phase than was even required, just so you could see what a building might look like on the site. But as far as the MSBA is concerned, they could care less about seeing a building on a site. They want to know what we're going to continue to study in more detail in the next phase, and that's the information that we would be passing along to them. So a couple of weeks ago, electronically, we submitted to each of the committee members the major components of the preliminary design program, which is the document that we're proposing to submit to MSBA. I do have some hard copies. This is the document. It's about 350 pages minus all of the appendices. With the appendices, it's about 1,000 pages. But this is everything without the appendices, if anybody wants to look at an actual hard copy of it. But it's all information that we have discussed with the building committee in the past. I'm going to do a really quick overview of what's in that preliminary design program. Certainly, we can answer any questions that you may have. This is the table of contents for the preliminary design program document. I would just point to the major pieces of it. The MSBA wants to know that the school department completed an educational visioning process and that they developed a written educational program. So I know that you've seen that document, and it has been prepared, and a lot of time was invested in that document by the school committee, the school administration. School committee reviewed it at their last meeting for final approval, but it certainly involved a lot of hours by a lot of people, community members as well, going through the educational visioning and preparing that document. So that's certainly part of this submittal. The space summary that we've talked about a number of times is part of this submittal. Essentially a first pass at the spaces that would be in the high school building. I would emphasize that we always try to be conservative in this phase and make sure that we've got everything in there that the building committee, the school committee, school administration, and the community may want to have. It's very difficult to increase the proposed size of the building after this, but certainly the MSBA would not have any problem with you decreasing certain areas. And we'll be looking at a lot of those things in more detail in the next phase, I would point out. Also in this submittal is a complete evaluation of the existing high school. We reviewed that document in draft form with the building committee at a prior meeting, but that document's certainly in there. And then a summary of all of the sites that will continue to be studied as part of the next phase and will be studied in detail is included in this particular submittal. And then there are a lot of appendices items. For example, the meeting minutes from tonight's meeting have to go into the document ultimately. But those major items that I mentioned are the primary content of the document. Those are some of the appendices. For example, at this point in time, we have completed a comprehensive hazardous materials evaluation of the existing building, so that document will be in appendices. We have completed a phase 1 environmental analysis, so that document will be in the appendices. We did some very preliminary geotechnical work looking at the subsurface conditions around the existing high school building, so that will be in there. We did a traffic study, again focusing around the existing building, so that document will be in there. And you can see some of the other items that are required as part of that process. Some of them are documents that have already been exchanged back and forth with the MSBA. In terms of the existing condition report, because that makes up a significant part of the preliminary design program, I just want to point out that we've prepared that in detail. It involves descriptions of the existing building systems. This just happens to be a diagram showing the evolution of the high school building and how each addition occurred over time. And then there's a lot of detail about the physical conditions of the building in terms of photographs and descriptive narratives. It includes a review of not only the architectural systems, but also mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, handicap accessibility. So you will see all of that and have seen all of that in the report that's being prepared. We tried to back all of the narrative information up with detailed photographs of the conditions, and I'm just showing a really super brief sampling of the report, obviously, just to give you a sense of the final format of the document. And then with regard to the next major component of the document, the educational program, this is the document that was prepared by Superintendent Galston and her staff, and subsequent to the educational visioning. I have various pieces of individual pages, just like the existing conditions report, but I'll pause at this point, Mr. Chairman, and just ask if you want to have any discussion related, or any commentary from the school department, or any discussion related to their involvement in this process.
So I think as we progress through the presentation, we'll hear a lot about the educational program. But I would like to just ensure the community that the process was exceedingly thorough, that the visioning process spanned several days. It involved 50-plus members of the high school staff, students, parents, community members, school committee members, the school administration, that really spent many, many hours thinking about what it is that we wanted to see in terms of the vision for our new high school for our students in Watertown. And I think through that process, what we determined is we want to make sure that whatever we build is certainly the best that we can do for our students in this century. And I think that what we see in our educational program certainly reflects the work of that large group of people that participated. And I think that what you're seeing is, in that plan, is not only is it visionary and reflects what it is that we want to see in a 21st century school, but it certainly has many aspects that are very specific to Watertown. It is a school that takes into the community of Watertown, the students of Watertown, the changing demographics of Watertown, the commitments to very core values in terms of equity, in terms of making sure that we value the diversity of our community, making sure that we ensure small class sizes so that our students maximize their potential, and we also have in there making sure that we provide multiple opportunities for students to engage in real-life, authentic learning opportunities. So I know that it's a 350-page document, but it's more than just a couple of pages of how many rooms we need. It really paints the picture of the story that we want in terms of our high school and what our students in Watertown deserve. So that's, and I think along the way, as Scott continues in the presentation, if there are things that I feel really are pertinent to add in terms of why we might have gone in a direction, then I will do so at that time.
Thank you.
The other thing I would add is Superintendent Galston did a really nice job in a community forum and then at school committee of dedicating more like an hour to a detailed discussion just around the educational program. Certainly tonight we don't have time to discuss it in that level of detail, but there are a couple of recorded presentations where the viewing audience could certainly see a nice detailed deep dive on the time that was spent, what some of the goals were, and what some of the outcomes were of that. We are required to document the visioning process, so the meetings that were held, the attendees who participated in those meetings, any of the diagramming that came out of those meetings, any of the discussions, the goal setting that came out of the educational visioning meetings. And so we're just setting up on this particular page an outline for some of those things that are included in our summary of the educational visioning. We also highlight kind of day by day and meeting by meeting the decisions that were made throughout educational visioning and some of the input that took place in all of those discussions. And then the narrative document that Superintendent Galston is describing, the actual educational program document, has to be submitted to the MSBA in a very specific format. So the document talks about the overview of the process. It talks about key program areas, key goals, and how the current building fails the school department and fails to provide appropriate spaces for 21st century education, and then what is 21st century education and what are the goals surrounding students, teachers, spaces, programs. And so there's a significant section that talks about all those kind of conceptual areas, student support, the entry experience into the building, flexible learning spaces, that set kind of big picture dialogue around all the different components of the building. And then the MSBA requires that the district talk in detail about specific program areas and how they're delivered, such as math, science, social studies, world language. So all those sections, again, are included as part of that educational program document. And this is what this is just a sampling of pages from the actual document. But as as the school department prepared narrative around things like the entry experience, we supported that with some photographs from projects and buildings that were explored in the educational visioning process. So when the school department talked about key areas of a 21st century building, like an interdisciplinary academic commons, there's an explanation of what that space is and how it supports education, but then also we've included examples of those from other projects to support their narrative. The school department did a nice job, Superintendent Galston did a nice job sort of framing what the high school of the future is, what it means to be a teacher in the 21st century and what the tools are that are required to be a successful teacher. We've pointed out on a number of occasions that the most important component to any school building would be the teachers, and without them there is no education. But it's fascinating as a new generation of teachers enter education, they're looking for the kinds of facilities that we're talking about and that the school department is talking about in this educational narrative, and it's really important that we deliver to them those kind of facilities, those kind of resources, and there's a lot of discussion in the educational narrative about what that means and what the future building needs to include for that reason. We talk about the importance of indoor-outdoor connections and outdoor learning in the document, and the school administration did a nice job with commentary around areas like fitness and nutrition connections. These are all really super important aspects of a future facility that, were not even considerations at the time that the current high school was designed and constructed. And then I know the building committee has seen a number of times the space summary, and it's kind of the nuts and bolts of what's in the existing building for spaces, and MSBA requires us to take the existing high school floor plan, which is what we're looking at, the first floor of the existing high school, and detail every single space in the building, its exact size, sort it by category so that they can compare that to the proposed new building. And that's what this particular floor plan is showing, is just the detailed analysis of the existing building. And then, as we've seen a number of times, the MSBA requires us to sort that existing building into its individual spaces by line item and by category, so that we can compare those to the proposed new building and also compare the proposed new building and the existing building to the MSBA guidelines. And so this is the space summary that the building committee last saw at the previous high school meeting that details all those spaces. And then we've talked about the summary of those spaces often in terms of the area of the existing building by major category. The MSBA sorts the existing building and any proposed new building into several major categories, and you see those categories listed in the left-hand column, far left-hand column here. We've talked about the MSBA guideline for those categories. We've talked about the existing high school. We've talked about the proposed new high school. And then we've talked about the space that is eligible for potential grant reimbursement and the space that is not eligible for potential grant reimbursement. And so I know we've talked through all of this with the building committee in the past, so I'm just briefly going to touch on a couple of things. One is, just as a reminder, the guideline is simply that. We've talked on a number of occasions about the fact that
Scott, hang
We're
on one
certainly-
second.
Yep.
This is not in the document. This was added this afternoon. So everybody's looking for it. You have to look on the screen for now.
Will this end up on some site? that
Yes.
you find art?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's in this. It actually, go ahead, move ahead. It kind
yeah,
of,
it's double-sided, so it
Oh,
might
it's
be...
out of order, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it got out.
Like, I'm looking, Okay,
It's the first page
Sorry.
under the options.
Sorry about that. I think we may have
Keep
put it in
going.
there out of order.
keep going,
Yeah, it's in there.
keep going.
Okay. I just want to reiterate that the term MSBA guideline can be a little bit confusing. I'm not aware of any high school that's been constructed in the any new high school constructed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that strictly went by the guideline. The MSBA recognizes that in many of these categories, there may be situations where the district, depending on their program, needs more space in the guideline. So, for example, in the core academic space area, even though their guideline is 34,530 square feet, we are preparing to submit for grant reimbursement 47,430 square feet. And we've talked about this before, but the primary delta between the guideline and the proposed new high school building in this particular category is tied to the number of classrooms, in that the guideline assumes approximately 24 students per classroom. In the Watertown High School now, it's actually around 20 students per classroom, and with the number of classrooms that we're proposing, it would average about 21.2 students per classroom, because we're proposing 27 general classrooms versus 24 general classrooms. And then 7 science classrooms actually complies with their guidelines. So there's a few additional general classrooms, and then there's space within this core academic area to achieve an academic commons, meaning a space that supports flexible learning outside of the classroom. It's a very common approach in high school education now, but the long and short of it is we'll be submitting for approval to the MSBA the 47,430 as part of the core academic category. And then a couple of other categories we've highlighted in the past because they do exceed the guideline, but we anticipate that they would be reimbursed-based, is in special education. Certainly the MSBA recognizes that that program varies significantly by district. So, and you can see that although it's slightly above the current proposed high school size, there is a reason for that, and it involves a detailed look at the current special education programs and trying to right-size some of those classroom spaces. And then the other area we've talked a little bit about, because it's slightly above the guideline, but we expect it to be reimbursable, is in the category of vocations and technology. Because of the newly added Chapter 74 programs in medical assisting and engineering technology, there is a slight increase over the existing building in that particular category. There are a lot of categories where we're completely aligned with the guidelines. For a media center, for example, the MSBA expects that would be relatively consistent between districts, and it certainly is in our experience, and so you can see we're aligning that with the guidelines. One item we've highlighted, or a handful of items we've highlighted as being non-reimbursable are the gymnasium area. Only 12,000 square feet is eligible for reimbursement for a gymnasium. That's an MSBA cap requirement. It doesn't mean that you can't construct a larger gymnasium, and in fact the existing high school has a significantly larger gymnasium. And in this particular program, we're reducing the size of the health and physical education space proposed in the new building by about 4,000 square feet over the current high school building. But we are proposing to keep a gymnasium which is approximately the same size as the existing gym, and also a fitness area that's the same size as the existing gym. So in the end, it results in approximately 6,400 square feet that will be non-reimbursed within the building. In the auditorium space, and we've reviewed this in the past, but the MSBA guideline limits an auditorium to 2/3 of enrollment, or 480 seats. They will allow you to design and construct a larger auditorium up to 750 seats. They just make the portion of the auditorium that exceeds 480 seats non-reimbursable. And as a reminder, the reason we're proposing 750 seats is because the current auditorium has 796 seats, so this would actually be slightly smaller, but in an effort to continue to accommodate community use, school functions, etc., at least in this current program as submitted to MSBA, we're proposing that it would be a 750-seat auditorium. Dining and food service is slightly larger than the guideline, all driven by the fact that all of the meals for the schools are prepared as part of a district kitchen, which is at the high school, and so that additional space is needed to accommodate the additional production in the kitchen there. Again, allowed by MSBA, but non-reimbursed as part of the grant program. A small additional amount of space in administration and guidance, small amount of space for the Watertown Community Education. Currently, the local cable access television studio is in the high school, and so we're proposing to replicate that in the new high school, but it would be a non-reimbursed space. And then spaces like the alumni conference room and the lecture hall that are in the existing high school are allowed by MSBA, but they're considered non-reimbursable spaces. So that's a quick summary of that. I know we've talked about it in the past. It tends to be an area of focus. I would point out that, again, all of these areas presumably would continue to be discussed throughout the preferred schematic phase, which is the next phase of the project. By the time we get to September of this year and submit a preferred schematic to the MSBA, we should have this refined to the point that there are no more adjustments in the total space summary.
Question, Steve?
I just have one quick one for you, Scott. So at this point, would you say we ought to err on the side of if anything, oversizing what we think we might want with the idea that we might pare back in the future versus trying to minimize what we're looking at with the idea that we could add to it later?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The MSBA certainly welcomes any reductions, but they are heavily resistant to adding any space after this submittal, so certainly erring on the side of caution.
Any other questions? Dee Dee?
So it's not so much a question, but just again, going back to, I mean, I think people probably have a pretty good sense of the special education spaces, but I think it's really important to make sure the community is very well aware of the fact that we house pretty much every special education program that is possible, meaning we have an integrated support program, we have a learning support program, we have a LEAP program for students who are 18 to 22, we have a language-based program, I just want to make sure, we have a connections program for students on the autism spectrum. You know, we have committed in Watertown forever to really meet the needs of our students, especially in the special education program. And you pointed out very clearly that the additional space is, if you look at it, and I hope people take a pretty good look at that, our classrooms right now are very undersized at the high school, and we're not looking to add really much to that, but to right-size them. But it also, I just want to make sure people know that we are very committed to maintaining those programs because it's a great benefit to Watertown in terms of all of our students being able to enjoy our schools. The only addition, and I think this is another important point because I think it undergirds the educational program, is there are some additional spaces for small breakout rooms in the larger areas of the academic areas of the school, because we want to ensure that our students are integrated as much as possible. And by providing those small breakout spaces, if a student is included in an English language arts class, for example, but they might be part of a separate program, there are spaces built in that we can work with them in small group areas while keeping the students in the larger inclusion setting. So I think that is just again, going back to the core values of our district, that is just exceedingly essential to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So I just wanted to highlight that as well.
Any other questions? Anyone in the audience? Please step up to the microphone and identify yourself.
My name is Susan Jones, and I am the high school's neighbor. that little brown house next to the, but I was looking at the allocations for art and music, which seems to be just static, not increasing. Are the breakout spaces going to be for arts and music, or what happens to the art and music?
So currently, if you were to, actually, in our high school, it's not configured well, but we do actually have pretty good sized spaces for art and music. And one of the goals in the educational program is to not necessarily separate spaces and have like compartmentalized, this is where the vocational technical program is, or this is where the art and music program is, but to see those programs more integrated throughout the school. So the goal is that you would be able to see and hear and really experience what students are doing in art and music, not just in a particular corner of the building, so.
Right, but what about, there's an orchestra
Yep.
still and a chorus. I went there
Right.
many centuries ago. And we had a very, very strong music program.
Yes.
We had spaces, but we didn't have practice spaces. But will there be individual practice in those little side rooms?
Yes.
That was,
Not for what I was just speaking of, but yes, in the actual program, practice rooms for lessons, or definitely one of the moves would be, right now, the orchestra practices on the stage, so making sure that there's a practice space for orchestra. So yes, we've been very mindful of using the space appropriately so that we are able to have dedicated spaces for, especially music when all is said and done, but definitely art as well. And our art programming is very robust, so it's not just,
lots of messy spaces.
yes, lots of messy spaces, yes.
That's all I wanted.
Yep. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Scott, but it's,
No, I think that's good. There are practice rooms, there are
Yes.
ensemble rooms, there are choral rooms, there are band rooms.
right.
Yeah.
And plenty of arts opportunities for students as well. And one other thing, and it doesn't take up space, but one of the goals in the educational program is to be very front and center exhibiting students' work. So we want to make sure that throughout the school, we see products of what students are doing. So it's not just in art, but our hallways and our entrance area, you would see what our students are producing. That's one of the major goals of this project.
Thank you.
Elodia Thomas, 67 Marion Road. I presume that you've all received my memo about my concerns about the school in terms of sizing, as well as Victory Field. I have to go to my meeting, so I would like to just make a couple of simple statements, and then again, I will be sending out another email. The biggest concern I have when I've read all these documents is nobody has respectfully included the average taxpayer as a stakeholder on any of these committees, whether it's this committee, the committee of 2016 or 2014. Everybody sitting here is either attached to school administration, to the town council, or they are an OPM or an architect. I'm the great unwashed public who's standing before you, who has no connection to any of those things. It's a critical error in your judgment. I would like to know about the Visioning and Ed program. How many people wrote that statement? Because when I read it, it is an adjective-laden document that just makes my mind explode. And this is representing our town, and it's going to the MSBA. And sorry, I'm a very critical writer who really looks for tightness and specifics, and I think this is completely off the map. I've talked to numerous people. People haven't even read it. People on the committee have not even read it. That concerns me. Finally, when I look this, I have to go, when I look at these costs for all these overages, whether the MSBA approves the 48% or not, when you look at all the add-ons, when we finally calculate these numbers, we could be looking at an overall, and I'm going to not get this exactly right, a participation cost of 30% towards this high school. We need to get this right. We need to do it correctly, and we need a lot more information. These things are not getting out into the public in time that they can really review them. I have gone to 2 different sites on the school site that it's over here, and old minutes are here, and plans are here. For God's sakes, can't we get one site that is prominently on the school committee site that if you want to know about this, you punch the button and you go right to it? I should not have to hunt. I have to look in the menu. I found 2 different areas for the documents. This is disgraceful. We have talked about this again and again and again, and it keeps going on. This is not informing the public. I'm sorry, you're making a serious mistake. Thank you. I need to leave to my meeting.
Anyone else? Yes.
Anne Marie Clonan, Winthrop Street. So I'm going to restate one of the things that I said from a prior meeting. The one thing that I don't see in any of the plans or spacing is a space for higher education support. And having a child that's in high school and understanding, not just in the 9th through reinforcement in the classrooms, but helping our children in Watertown so that they understand how to do the application, go out and look at schools, and have that solid space and support within a building that they can go to is critical to getting them into really good colleges. And I don't see it and hear it in the vision. Medical assistant and engineering are really narrow. The medical assistants are great because there's a big need in Massachusetts for it and other health institutions, but it's a limited scope for salary. And I'll pause because I know you want to respond. Yes?
Yes. So one of the areas in the space I'm reading is actually in the educational program as well, is the guidance area, which, and I think I said this at the community forum, in Watertown, we have one of the lowest guidance counselor ratios it's probably in the state, meaning, we have 5 actual guidance counselors that work with, roughly 660 students, which is remarkable because the average is about 1 to 270. We're at about 1 to 120. So, when it comes to guidance counseling for future planning, our students have far more personalized guidance than most high schools in Massachusetts. That being said, also, beyond the programs that you just mentioned, we do have a very clearly articulated career and technical pathway, which includes not just the 2 Chapter 74 programs, but, we have digital arts, we have radio and television broadcasting, culinary, early childhood, and growth and development. And you asked this question as well the last time. We are working towards dual enrollment. We do have students who do dual enrollment, but that is something that we are looking to explore as well. Not just dual enrollment, but looking at opportunities for early college, high school within our schools. So I do believe that the building does have space for a career center, a guidance center for our students. That is certainly part of our educational program to ensure that students are aware of what's available to them. One last thing, and even within those Chapter 74 programs and the whole career and technical pathway, co-ops and opportunities to get work experience happen before graduation. So I do think that is something very front and center in our plan.
Can you tell me where in the plan it is? Because I haven't been able to find it.
So if you look in the guidance document, for sure, and then...
The guidance document it's generalized to everything that you just said.
Yep.
And I'm talking about making sure that juniors and seniors have that support.
Yes.
And I can't find that.
So I can send, yes, it's not it might not be delineated in that detail in the educational program, but certainly I can send you from our guidance department. They have a college and career curriculum that they start in 9th grade, and that is something that isn't in there, but it is something that we do publish and I could provide to you.
So I expect the curriculum through 9th through 12th.
Yep.
I'm talking about a deeper level of support, and I can have an offline, or I can even write components, because I've seen and experienced through 2 children in the schools that we've placed them in that have had, I'm not sure that you include all schools in Massachusetts when you talk about the number of guidance counselors to support. Maybe it's just the public schools in this area.
Schools.
So there's definitely a mix of schools out there that support the higher.
Right. I'm talking about public schools, yes.
I know from children now in the program of my own children's age that they don't get the level of support that we could provide them for completing applications, for understanding where they need to go, in a concentrated effort. There's lots of other career paths that you have, but that is essential in the competition to get our Watertown High kids into good schools.
Right. And so I would encourage an offline conversation, because we do have, again, other programs that are very targeted and personalized for each student to really explore the college application process, get ready for the essays, put your resume together. That's all part of what we do for our students. Yes.
Okay. I hear a different response from some of the families, so I'll give you that.
Yep, great.
Anyone else? Yes.
I just want to ask, that document will be online, and maybe a hardcover could be put in the library?
Yeah, and we'll have a copy in the school department as well.
The library is
Yep.
easier for me to
Yes, I'm just, in addition to, we could have one at the school department.
Anyone else? Scott?
As a reminder, the MSBA will require us in the next phase to study what we refer to as a base repair option. And this is just to establish a benchmark for the town with regard to if you did absolutely nothing at the existing high school, but you had to address the failing physical conditions and code upgrades, what would the town have to expend over the next 10 years in order to address those things? And MSBA requires us to do this in order for the town to better understand that there are a number of things that have to be addressed, even if you didn't want, hypothetically, to improve education or to have a 21st century high school facility, there are things that would have to be addressed regardless, and they refer to that as the base repair option. They also ask us to demonstrate that as part of that option, there would be a very limited amount of grant reimbursement available. So it also goes to reinforce the importance of doing a more comprehensive project is the purpose of including that in the analysis in the next phase. And then we'll certainly be continuing to evaluate the existing site, and we're reporting to the MSBA that we'll do an option 1 series that continues to take a more detailed look at opportunities that may exist with on the existing site. They will ask us to evaluate potential additions and renovations to the existing building, as we've talked about in the past. Again, we don't think the existing building is going to be a very good candidate for renovation and addition due to the complications of trying to phase in that construction, the limitations of the existing building structure, a lot of limitations that are detailed in the report, but they will ask us to evaluate both from a cost perspective and a potential for reconfiguration perspective, what a renovation and expansion or modification to the existing building might look like. We've reported to the MSBA that we're also going to take a more detailed look at the combination of the existing high school site and the Phillips site without limiting ourselves. This says ABC because we showed the building committee 3 different variations on possibilities at the 2 sites combined, but this would not limit what we would look at. We're going to sort of start with a clean slate and think about creative ways to utilize the Phillips site and the existing building site in combination. So those options may look nothing like the ones you've seen in the past because this will be a more detailed look at that approach. We've told the MSBA that we're going to continue to look collectively at the parcels that include the existing stadium, Victory Field, and some possible adjustment to DPW if we saw that there was some value in that. But just in general, continue studying in more detail what is or is not possible on those parcels. I would again reiterate that it doesn't mean we're going to specifically study A, B, C, D. The only reason we included those in the preliminary design program is to demonstrate to MSBA that it could be any combination of possibilities there, and we're now ready to explore that in more detail. And I should add, we are reporting to the MSBA that for a variety of different reasons, we will not be studying the Moxley Field option. Too little space, smaller than the existing high school in terms of the site, displacement of existing fields and green space with no way to replicate them. There were a variety of different reasons we put forward for not continuing to evaluate that site in the next phase. And so with that, I'll pause. Essentially, again, as Tim mentioned earlier, tonight we're just asking for building committee approval to take all of this documentation and submit it to the MSBA so we can get their feedback and begin to move on to the next phase.
Pete Santor, Director of Recreation. I didn't see my favorite schematic, Scott, so I'm wondering what happened. My
You'll have
favorite
to be-
schematic
you'll
is
have to
the...
give me more information.
The favorite schematic is the athletic facility built on Victory to replace the current field house.
Yeah, that would be part of the option one study where if we build on the existing high school site and we displace the gym and physical education space there, we would need some swing space. And we talk about that in the report, and that would be evaluated as part of an option one scenario. It also may be evaluated as part of some of the option three scenarios.
Okay. I just liked it. I liked it when you had the nice picture.
Sure. I would reiterate that we did that level of analysis so that we could jumpstart the discussion around it, but the MSBA does not have a requirement for us to do that level of detailed analysis until we get to the next phase.
That's
So
correct.
that's the reason we're not including all those different scenarios in this report.
I appreciate it, but it is still within the realm of possibilities.
Everything on any of the sites, I would assume, depending on the direction from the building committee, is within the realm of possibilities.
Thank you.
Yes.
I keep hearing that, Bob Marcella, Mount Auburn Street, I keep hearing that you're rejecting the renovation and the type solutions. Is there somewhere where there's an explanation or a narrative of how you've come to those conclusions?
Yeah, renovation addition, I should be clear, we're not rejecting it. We anticipate that due to a variety of different inherent conditions in the building, it's going to be prohibitively expensive and very complicated as a project. But the MSBA is going to require us to study it in detail. So if I implied that we were rejecting it, absolutely not. We're just anticipating that it's going to be unattractive due to the cost and complexity, but we'll
Somewhere
study.
you'll explain what those costs are, please?
Yes, absolutely, we have to. Yep, we have to in the next phase.
Any other questions? Yes, Libby. Yes, you have to get up to the...
Libby Shaw with Trees for Watertown. This seems like a good time to just read the letter that I sent on behalf of the Trees for Watertown Board of Directors earlier to the Watertown School Building Committee. Trees for Watertown shares the community concern regarding proposed locations for Watertown's new high school. Moxley Field and Victory Field are both well-loved community parks with healthy, mature trees. We are concerned that Watertown is considering eliminating either of these important, well-used community green spaces when building the new high school on the current site is a valid option, and it's great to hear that Moxley's off the table here. I'm pretty sure everyone here is well aware that Watertown is open space poor. As Elodia Thomas points out in her recent letter to the town, we have only 3.7 acres of parkland and outdoor recreation space per 1,000 people. This is only about a third of the amount of space per 1,000 people that is the National Recreation and Park Standard for a healthy city. Green open space and abundant tree canopy are tremendously important for the health of a city, to physical health, mental health, and community health, particularly when it's at the heart of a neighborhood as both Moxley Field and Victory Field are. As the climate continues to warm, Watertown's natural green infrastructure will become even more critical to the health of our city. Let's make every effort to expand and support our green open community space and healthy mature tree canopy, not to shrink them. We strongly recommend that Watertown build our new high school in the current location rather than eliminating scant, precious, well-sited, well-used, and critically important green space. Thank you for your attention. And this is signed by the members of the Trees for Watertown Board of Directors.
Thank you.
I know, same person as before. I noticed that in some of the schemes, there's no idea of what you're going to do with the existing space? For example, if you went to Victory Field, what would happen to the existing high school? And what happens to the Phillips administration? It seems that's part of the equation that could have an impact on the cost in terms of benefits to the town. I wonder if you guys have given that much thought. Obviously, you've given a lot of thought to a lot of things.
That has been discussed by the building committee. We've talked about and presented just conceptual scenarios to the committee that if, for example, the Victory Field area was displaced, the existing high school site should be the area where that green space is replicated, and it would involve demolition, and there's a cost associated with that. And then the displacement of any fields at Victory Field that would have to be replicated in some other location. We've talked about that and the cost of that. And then certainly with the Phillips building, the combination of using the Phillips site and the existing high school site, we've talked about things that we refer to as enabling projects, which means essentially if we did eliminate the Phillips building, we'd need a project that included replicating that space somewhere else. So those costs, at least conceptually, have been talked about, and they would be factored in to the future analysis. And
They're not part of the state analysis, because they don't care. But obviously, the town would care.
that is correct. We've broken them out separately in our discussions with the building committee from the actual cost of the high school so that they could see what it was costing to build the high school and then what it would cost, at least conceptually so far, to deal with all those other projects. And it's why there's such a wide range, quite frankly, now of what the potential project costs might be until we settle on what all those various impacts are.
Good evening, Lisa Feltner. I think 3 questions. So to your point, people wondering about the cost differences, and I know you had mentioned more at the high level, concept level with the building committee. And I guess that it's connected to being able to find information online. I don't know if, I've tried to find myself, if there's plans or if you could give general cost to the scenarios, and if that was easy to find online. People keep having questions about why options were eliminated or being considered. So I don't know if there's any summary documents or if they're already there, if they could just be, easier to find or pointed to. And one of the options people keep asking about is potentially building on the football stadium at Victory Field. And I know that these project options show on the oval combined with DPW, and people are asking about just on the stadium, and of course there'd be implications then in the cost of, where green space could go. Everything affects everything else. And the last thing is just, again, with the documents, so you really, this presentation never shows at home. You can't see the screens at all. It doesn't convey to the TVs what is shown on the screens, partly because we don't have HD, but partly just the contrast is way too small and everything. So I'm hoping that, after these meetings, that if it could just be clearly labeled, and then within tonight's set, I think maybe in the table of contents, maybe the highlight relates to what the pages are you're included, but I know it's confusing for people because pages aren't numbered or what have, so I know this is just a technical issue for the consultant or the committee, just to be aware that the public is trying to follow information, but is having difficulty. But in the meantime, I appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Just a couple of things. With regard to the various options and conceptual costs that have been presented to the building committee, at this point in time, you would have to review the 3 presentations or 3 separate presentations that involved various options, and you'd have to review those. Now, that is 11 by 17 format PDF, so that if someone does view it online, you should be able to see it online. I understand that on the television screen, it might not have the same clarity, but should be able to review it online. That having been said, when this document is submitted to MSBA collectively, it will combine everything that we've talked about. So you would be able to see all of the different ranges of costs and options that are being discussed. So if someone wants to see kind of a summary of everything, this is going to be likely the document they would want to look at, and certainly I'm sure that will be made available online to review. And then just with regard to an option that looks specifically at just the stadium site in that, within those collective parcels at the Victory Field area, we did, I think it was the January 8th meeting, we did show just conceptually a scenario like that, but we would certainly, as we move into the next phase, be looking in more detail at the possibility of just building on that stadium as one of the scenarios that we would look at on those collective parcels.
If I may just
Yes.
add to the cost discussion that, at this stage, the costs are really done almost on a relative basis, and they're very conceptual. There's no more design than what you see there in terms of the cost. So I think in the next stage, there'll be more costing available that'll be more accurate, and of course, the final cost will be in beginning of 2021 when we've advanced the design. So people should be cautioned about cost at this stage are very conceptual and more relative than specific.
Yes.
I'm still Susan Jones from 24 Broadway, which is a little piece of that little house. So my concern is a very personal one. And this is the first meeting I've been to because I'm not on the list. No one's ever asked me anything. Knocked on my door and said, we're thinking of doing something with the high school. I was not invited to the January 18th. Somebody told me about it, and I got myself on the list. I intend to come around and keep. But I will be impacted if you don't go to Victory Field. My house will be impacted, and so I need to be able to think ahead about as you make your timelines. I'm not against the school, but I want to know what's going to happen, how it's going to impact me and my husband. We just moved there 5 years ago. Should we be looking for senior housing? Do we have to leave? So I want more. I want you guys to talk more to the neighbors, as well as the taxpayers. Talk to the neighbors and let us know what is going on, and be respectful of us. Thank you.
We are having another series of forums, and we will make sure that all of the neighbors become aware, and we will be continuing to establish lists that we will get out to as many people as possible.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, Kate Coyne, Watertown. To your point, the documents are great. I just want to ask, are they only in the meeting presentation areas in the websites? Because they are hard to find, back to Elodia's point also. There's no context around them to know what to look at and what not to look at. So that would be very helpful for all the residents. You have nothing to do with that. It's more of the town. And that would just help everyone, I think, going forward for more information.
We realize we've had challenges in these two areas with the elementary schools and the high school, and we will be, within the next 3 to 4 weeks, I should say 4 to 6 weeks, we will have completely new places where you can go to find all these documents.
Thank you. I understand it's a challenge. I just wanted to reiterate because it's hard to find. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Anne Marie Clinton with the Street. One question. So if we build on the existing site versus on the Victory Field options, would we have to limit anything for size options for programs if we do build on the existing versus Victory? Will we be able to offer more to the kids on that Victory site?
In terms of the physical building program, it would be the same regardless of where we build. The MSBA actually wouldn't allow us to compromise the building program to fit one side or the other, so we'll have to demonstrate that it would be the same regardless.
So everything's equal, we wouldn't be able to offer anything additional if we did go to Victory, as an example?
We have to, I mean, the next phase is about evaluating that, but for any option to be valid and viable, we'll have to demonstrate that it would be, certainly be educationally equivalent. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes. Please identify yourself for the record.
Douglas Hood, Fairview Ave. The Phillips property, how far along in the process did that come up as an option to include as part of the footprint of the new high school?
Going back to the very first presentation that we made to the building committee about potential explorations, we talked about the Phillips site, the existing high school site, all of the parcels at Victory Field, and the Moxley site, and then any potential private sites that might be available.
So building across, I guess, with a footbridge is kind of the conservative approach to kind of boost the square footage of the high school footprint?
Well, utilizing both of the parcels in any combination would work to reduce the amount of program required in one area or the other. So ultimately, the goal of using both parcels would be to try to free up more collective green space and open space in that area by using them in combination. But until we explore those in detail, we don't know exactly what that would look like.
Mm-hmm. And how aggressive are we being? Are we being super conservative with our approaches, or are we being aggressive with our approaches when we're trying to come up with options and trying to maximize what limited space options that we have? Because it seems like we're narrowing it down to Victory Field, which has its challenges, and the existing site, which obviously has its challenges, to achieve the goal of this 21st century high school that will be sufficient for many generations to come. It seems appropriate to try to get it right and leave every option open versus to hamstring ourselves. It just seems reasonable to if you're taking on a project of this scope for the entire school system going forward and trying to get the school system to move to a higher level. I think one of the concerns that we have as parents is do we stay in Watertown or move to a town that has a much better track record for schools? And if this is going to put us in that higher category with higher performance and better results, then we would want to stay in Watertown. And I don't think I'm alone in that idea. So getting this right is important to me as a parent. So I'm curious, how aggressive are we and how flexible are we being about our options?
Well, I think certainly there are land limitations to Watertown, as you heard mentioned earlier.
Right.
But, you know, in my opinion, and Tim, as your owner's project manager, Tim and I have worked together for many, many years on various projects in high schools, and my office that I've had for 22 years and my career of 30 years is all in educational facilities. And we certainly, I would certainly relay to you that all the direction that we've been given by this building committee in this town, even starting back on the elementary schools, was to do whatever we had to do the right thing by education. And this committee has directed us to keep a very open mind with regard to any of the possibilities. So if we didn't think we could design something amazing, we wouldn't be here. We've been doing this long enough that we can be very selective. And if you probably didn't see some of the early rendering work we did around the existing high school site, but we had some really good early conceptual ideas before we ever even got into the MSBA process. And certainly, regardless of where the building goes, we know that this has to be an amazing facility for Watertown. So I certainly, if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't be the least bit concerned about anybody putting a ceiling on what the potential is, because the direction we've been given is just the opposite of that.
To include those two sites, the Phillips and the existing high school, has there been any talk about basically wiping out the Common Street and building completely right across, include that as part of the entire footprint in the plot plan, and say, you know what, why don't we just take over Common Street, we'll redirect traffic another way, but that will be the new high school site, rather than using up almost 4 lanes of traffic in some stretches for folks to get around the country club, rather than go School Street to get around the country club.
We've had some early conversations with town engineering and the traffic engineers about that. Without getting into the weeds, it appears super challenging for a lot of different reasons, but I suspect that it may come up again as we take a detailed look at those two sites in combination.
Well, I would understand this wastewater and other infrastructure underneath, but it doesn't necessarily have to be accessible under pavement. It certainly could be a sub-basement where it could be accessible and functional, I would think. But, challenging-wise, I get it, but I think one of the concerns is we don't have a property large enough to do what we want to do and do it right. So we're making the best of what we have. And how do you make the best of what you have if you eliminate options like this massive amount of square footage, this swath of land that would cut right between the two structures?
Okay, sir, we're really not discussing any of these options at this point.
Oh, I'm not trying to discuss them. I'm
Scott
trying
will
to
answer that
open them
question,
up
and then I'm going to ask you,
consideration.
and then I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you to come to the community forum
Yeah.
on March 26th, and
Yeah.
you'll see how this process is going to evolve.
Yeah.
We're not discussing any
Okay.
particular option this evening, so
All right.
I don't want to focus on that.
Okay. I'm under the weather. I'm taking some
understand.
medication.
I
I didn't
understand.
plan to come, but it was
I
important to me
understand.
to be here. Yeah.
I've allowed you plenty
Yeah.
of time, but we're
Oh, I didn't
going
know I
off
was on a limit.
into
I
a
apologize.
conversation that we weren't having this evening.
Sorry.
Scott, did you have something to add to that?
No, point well taken.
Thanks. Anyone else? Anyone from the committee? Can I get a motion?
Did you want to go over this
You need to go over the next page, or?
before we take a vote? Because I think that's sort of what we're going to be voting on.
Yeah, this is just a summary of what I've already talked about in terms of the options that we're going to move into the next phase on. So this is the page out of the report that just talks about all the different things that we're going to continue to evaluate in the next phase.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the School Building Committee approves the submittal of the Watertown High School Preliminary Design Program as presented tonight, excluding the Moxley Field option, to the MSBA.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, it's unanimous. Okay, Scott. Tim? Scott, whatever.
The next item is the community forum, which is scheduled for March 26th, 2020. We've had some conversations with AI3 about the structure of that and as well as the school department, and we are expecting to be able to provide a little more detail around some of the options that we're exploring right now. I don't think it'll be necessarily a tremendous amount, although if you want to have an opinion on that. But the forum is going to be at the auditorium in the high school, because we did have some challenges with occupants, with the capacity of the lecture hall. So it'll be at 6:30 on Thursday, March 26th. And we will be talking more specifically about the options. Anything you want to add to that?
Did you have anything else that you wanted to add? No? Okay. go to the Sustainability Committee update. John?
So the Sustainability Subcommittee met at 5 o'clock. So this meeting had a full presence. Steve was there, and Lori, and then Scott was there also, the OPM was there. And then we have Beth Greenblatt, who's the consultant we've hired to look at the third-party ownership versus town ownership of solar panels. Gave a presentation. She had a slide a slide presentation, and she walked through that, and that actually pretty much took the entire time. So it's a lot of detail, a lot of information. I will say that it's kind of preliminary. It's based on some assumptions, a variety of assumptions, because she's projecting out 20, 25 years. So there's a number of assumptions, some of which she wants to talk to other people in the town to confirm and make sure that they are the right assumptions. So we will continue that conversation, and I think our intention is to meet next Wednesday before the next building committee at 5 o'clock to continue the discussion. That's it.
That's it. Scott or Tim, do you have anything additional? Review and approval of invoices?
None.
None. Anyone have any other issues that we need to talk about? Steve?
And maybe I'm out of line saying this, but I think it might be helpful. I just wanted to say because we've all gotten lots of emails about, why Victory Field doesn't make sense for the high school, and, Libby Shaw got up and made a statement. I just thought it would be important for people to know that by including that as an option, it's not that we're saying that that's the option that we're going forward with. It's just important that when we go forward to the MSBA, that we put forward any viable options, which obviously that is a viable option, although some people don't feel it's the appropriate one. But we need to put all those options on the table, and that's the reason why there wasn't a whole bunch of discussion or debate about that. We're just putting forward all the options, not eliminating any at this point, other than Moxley, because that wasn't big enough. So I just thought it'd be helpful to point that out.
Thank you, Steve. I should have pointed that out from the outset. The other thing that we're trying to avoid here is we're creating a situation where we have neighbors on one side saying they don't want it there, put it there, and neighbors over here saying don't put it here, put it. We don't want to create that situation. Steve did a great job explaining these things are all on the table because the MSBA wants us to explore every single possible option. It doesn't mean we're moving. That decision is going to be made after several more community meetings, after several more discussions with the architect and looking at designs, and sometime later in June, we'll probably have a preliminary vote, and this vote is due to the MSBA in September. So we have a long way to go before we get to a site, and I do want to assure people that just because it's on there doesn't mean it's going there, including the Phillips School. So, thank you. Vinnie?
If I also weigh in, and there's a good point that Mr. Hood, is it Hood? Yeah. Made about, the current high school is almost 100 years old. And we are building this for the long term. I mean, we are really building this for the 21st century. And, we want to be careful, weighing all these options, that we're not taking a shortcut, for the sake of expediency to get this built, because this is actually more than just a high school. This is the #1 educational facility in the district. It's the high school, because every child, he may go to 3 different elementary schools, but everybody goes to the high school. And it's more than just a high school, it's actually a community center. I mean, our school buildings are not just locked up at 4 o'clock at night. They are used, 7 days a week, 12 months a year. So I think it's really important for this committee, and working with the architect and the owner's project manager, to really examine all those options and not just consider the building educational vision that the school department has, and they're responsible, just so the public knows that it's not this committee's responsibility to determine the educational programming. That is strictly with the superintendent and the school committee. But we need to approach this from a community development and planning standpoint about what's in the best interest of the town of Watertown, not just today, not just 10 years from now, but, what's going to be important 50 years from now. So I think, if you look at what we did with the 3 elementary schools and how that scope of that project changed from the very beginning, it was basically additions and renovations to 3 schools to finally coming to the conclusion that we would just actually have to tear down 2 schools and build 2 brand-new ones in order to achieve our vision for the future. I think everybody we have some regular attendees here who've been to meetings over the last 2 years. We will apply the same process to this new high school, and we'll come up with something that is going to be really innovative and exciting for the whole community. But I think we need to keep an open mind, and we need to understand that, it's Watertown. When the Watertown High School was built in 1928, all the land was already used, so it was just sort of jammed in there at that time. So and things have gotten worse over the last 100 years. So a lot of challenges, but we're keeping an open mind, and it's very exciting that what we're doing.
Dee Dee?
And just to add to the point that, yes, the educational program is the responsibility of the school department. I just want to emphasize once again that the creation of that educational plan was a large group of people that contributed to not just the document, to the process as well, including the leadership team, teachers in the school, central administration, and, I take pride in the document, and I think it really does encapsulate what it is that we would like to see for our school. And I would say that, and somebody picked up on this before, that we have, excellent teachers in our high school, and we have amazing students. And right now, our building is limiting our ability to maximize what we already have. And by having a state-of-the-art 21st century high school, we will be able to ensure that we are top-rated, top-notch, excellent in all aspects, not just our great teachers and our great students, but our building as well. And I think I think we're doing great already, but I do think that this is something that will enhance and really provide tools for our teachers and our students to truly become 21st century learners and educators.
Anyone else? Anyone else in the public want to say anything else? Yes.
Anne Marie Clonan, Winthrop Street. Thank you for all you did, and I do openly acknowledge the Hosmer experience, the elementary school experience, absolutely from A to Z changed, and you listened to the public, and you acted on that, and you modified. But I want to add to or make a statement in regards to what Vinnie just said. Our entire town, as taxpayers and parents, are invested in making sure our children, our children's children, have a good education. And while these kind of people are sitting at the steering right now, we have a voice as taxpayers, right? A vested interest in making sure that our children get the best education, that for our children that will remain here, or parents that want to keep their kids here, that they stay in the town. And right now, sorry, but our town doesn't have a great reputation for the education for our kids. And we can build whatever beautiful building we have, and it doesn't matter if the quality isn't in there. And so we do have a voice, Vinnie. I strongly have my voice. I know the parents and neighbors have the voice too. If we can build this building, it's great. I think it's wonderful what we're trying to do, and I totally believe that you will do the best thing for the town and the space. But education has to be on the forefront, and we get to say that. We get a say as taxpayers. So thank you for your comments, but they might sit in the seat for the job that we pay for, but we get a voice. So thank you.
Yes. Second.
I'll be shorter.
No, that's great. That's fine.
I definitely want to echo some of the sentiments. The lady that had to leave for another meeting, she expressed concerns about who was in the room, who was participating, whether or not they were being communicated to as far as notices and being available to be in the room. And it goes to the point of the parents and the taxpayers that are in the town and trying to make decisions about their future. And that's a really good point. I have a young child, and I wouldn't necessarily be so concerned about the the preschool at this point. That's my long view, right, is what's the high school going to be like? That's where the rubber meets the road, where the kids are really going to excel and where they're going to, basically carve their future, ideally. So I would think if we can make a little bit more effort to reach out to those folks that have the younger kids in the system, saying, hey, come participate, tell us what you want for your kids for the future, and let's make sure that we're building the right facility and meeting the right needs for your kids as they grow through the system, rather than folks that have had kids in the system previously. It's definitely the younger parents that need to be here. And if we're cognizant of that, obviously the younger parents, the millennials, if you're not aware, they are the largest cohort in the country now. They've surpassed the baby boomers. So the millennial generation, the ones that are having families, those are the ones that are going to be the largest population group, and those are the folks that are going to be putting their kids through these schools. But Vincent, I commend you for mentioning that there was a more cohesive approach or a larger view of the property and its use. It's not just a school, but it's a community center, and anything that could be done to build on that, be it adult education in the evening to make sure it's situated to make use of that, make sure the auditoriums and those larger facilities are great for multiple use for multiple groups, not just the students, but other folks that would like to use the space, and perhaps even a space that we can rent and generate revenue going down the road. I know there's not a pool currently, right? In the high school I grew up in, we had a pool, and that was a nice benefit to have, because it was both a free swim space, a learning space, as well as a competitive space. But, pools are expensive, of course. But thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Dee Dee.
So I just wanted to mention to the public that in terms of voice, for example, every month I hold the superintendent's coffee. Anybody in the public is welcome to come. At those coffees, I get a lot of information and ideas and feedback and criticism and you name it about our schools. And it's open to the entire public. And I have a coffee tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And that's a great forum to bring voice in. And one of the things that to that idea, I have been at all the PTO meetings where we make sure that we're presenting the information about the building projects to the PTOs, and that's something that we'll continue to do. But you're right about the fact that I'm hoping that we're getting to the younger parents, because those are the people that will have kids in the new high school. So we certainly have to do a really, not just continue, but a concerted effort to ensure that those future high school goers understand what we're trying to do for those students. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Next item on the agenda is the next meeting, which is going to be March 4th, and that will be focused on the elementary schools. And then, as we mentioned, the community forum, and we'll keep mentioning those as often as possible. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.